Welcome all. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening. We appreciate your participation and your active role as citizens. I'd like to start off by just saying that I'm not used to speaking into this microphone, so please bear with me.
We're on the screen. They can see us.
Be shy about calling out if you can't hear me. For those of you on Zoom, if you could please mute your microphones. That would be much appreciated. Thank you. I'd like to start off by giving a special thanks to Recreation Director Anna McEwen, who organized this forum this evening, coordinating with Concord Youth Baseball and Softball, and collecting public input. I want to start us by being clear about what the role is of the Recreation Department and the Recreation Commission. Start off with a little overview of how we are organized as a town. In Concord, Parks and Rec do not operate under one department. Instead, they work in collaboration, the Recreation Department, the Public Works Department, and the Facilities Department. They have a long, strong record of collaboration, but they do not sit within the same department. The Recreation Department is responsible for the recreational programming in scheduling of recreational assets such as fields and facilities. The Public Works Department, in coordination with facilities, are responsible for the upkeep and maintenance of our fields. As I mentioned, they work collectively to make sure that our public resources for recreation are kept top-notch. I also want to make sure that we're taking this opportunity to be clear about the role of the Recreation Commission and our authority in regards to matters such as these. Per our administrative code, which can be found online on the town's website, and we just recently updated it this past June, I believe. It was older than I am. The Recreation Commission, to be clear, we do not have the authority to approve these projects. That lies with the Select Board. Our role is to provide input and make recommendations to the Select Board. To that end, we appreciate all of you being here tonight, but I just wanted to be clear that we're all aware of what that role is and where the responsibilities lie. Make sure that I have everything here. It is my hope, as I mentioned before, that as we move forward with this type of process for matters such as these, that we continue that strong partnership with Public Works, with facilities. Thank you, Ryan Orr, for being here this evening. We appreciate you. And develop a strategic, thoughtful process for addressing these matters going forward so that the public is aware, so that folks who are looking to provide resources or gifts to the town are aware of what the process is. The purpose of tonight's meeting. Our scope is going to be very clear, very defined. We are going to hear a presentation from Concord Youth Baseball and Softball regarding the batting cage area at Rideout and baseball field number 2 at Rideout Park. That includes outfield fencing, proposed outfield fencing, and backstop padding. To those of you that are aware, that is that soft padding that goes behind home plate. I needed to make sure that I was up on that myself. This meeting will not be a discussion about any other amenities at Rideout. That includes scoreboards, pickleball courts, other baseball diamonds, etc. This is simply just baseball field number 2, the backstop, the proposed outfield fencing, and the batting cage area. After the CCYB and S does their presentation, the commission members, myself, Jim Howard, and Paul Bohm, and Pete Funkhauser will ask questions. Once that is finished, we will open up to public comment. We have allotted 2 hours for this meeting, so we ask that all of you stay on topic and be mindful of time. We really want to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to make their voice heard. To that end, if there are folks who are listening online who see this recording later or here in person, if you would like to submit written comments, you may do so by contacting Anna McEwen. She's got business cards here, and I can read off her email address if anyone's interested, amckeown@concordma.com. We will be .gov. Sorry, I blew that. Absolutely. Also, so Anna has business cards right here if that's helpful, but it is OWN. Yeah, that would be. Okay, thank you. It's a great idea.
So my email address is McEwen, McKeown @concordma.gov. You can find my email address on the Concord Rec website as well.
We will be accepting public comments until 5 p.m. this Friday. We are not taking any vote or consideration this evening. This evening is solely dedicated to hearing about the project and hearing public comment. We will be meeting as a commission next week. We will determine that date at the end of this meeting and make sure it is appropriately publicized. At that meeting, the commission will determine what next steps we will take. If that is an affirmative recommendation, if it is formal support, all of that will be determined at next week's meeting. Make sure I'm not missing any important pieces here. I think I kind of nailed it. What do you think? All right, I think I nailed it. All right, so to that end, I'd like to turn it over to the Deputy Town Manager, Kate Hodges, to go over some ground rules for this evening. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, but you have covered all of the ground rules, which is extremely exciting and very impressive. The only thing I would add is once the chair calls upon you, please state your name first and last and your address, please, for the minutes. That's all I have.
Thank you, Kate. Well done. With that in mind, we're going to start off with the presentation from Concord Carlisle Youth Baseball and Softball.
Yeah, right to the podium. Perfect.
Good evening, everyone. John O'Neill. I am the baseball commissioner for CCYBS.
And hi, I'm Dan Healy, Director of Baseball Operations for CCYBS.
Thank you to the commission and the Recreation Department for having us here tonight and for allowing us to present our proposal publicly. Next slide, please. Awesome. So just a couple of brief slides to run through with some talking points about our proposal for Rideout 2 baseball field, the one that sits in the middle of Rideout Playground, right adjacent to the playground. Over the past couple years, we have, CCYBS has gotten a boom in our baseball and softball registrations. We're up over 500 participants this spring, spring being our showcase season and our most heavily registered season. Alongside fields in town, the Ripley Field and Rideout 1 right next door, Rideout 2 is one of our premier, what we call 4660 or Little League sized fields. So appropriate up to age 12 or 6th graders. Thinking about Ripley and Rideout 1 and their facilities and their fencing there, and thinking about what effect some fencing has on the playability of the field itself, allowing young players to understand where they are on the field, allowing them to understand positioning where they need to be. So we think about it from a playability standpoint and just thinking about being more efficient at practices, making games more official, if you will, or more more in line with what these young players will see as they kind of grow up and develop their game. Keeping the game fast and fun, it's kind of a tagline that we use at CCYBS a lot, and just kind of providing that boundary in the outfield will help with that as well. Most importantly here is kind of the last bullet, which I've noticed myself. My son who plays is in 4th grade now, so we've kind of been up using that field for the past 3 or 4 years. The field's primarily used by 1st through 6th graders. We anticipate about 250 players will go through that field this spring. Is just clearly defining the boundary of that field. There's a lot of times when there's games or practices going on when there's either families rolling through with toddlers who kind of meander through the activity with batted balls, flying in that direction, or dogs running through, or balls that have kind of left the playing field area that proceed into another activity that's going on. So thinking about this last piece here, yes, the playability is going to be better for our players, but there's also that safety piece for both the players and the park users in general, I think. Next slide, please. So in terms of the temporary fencing itself, the company that we use to provide us the quote actually provides a similar service at the high school. Since their high school field in the fall, they overlay different kinds of fields in the outfield there. So for the spring season, it comes in. So we got a quote from that same company. It is about 185 feet from home plate around the circumference from foul pole to foul pole. It is a 4-foot black vinyl coated chain link. The poles get driven right into the ground. There is not any permanent sleeves that are left there or anything permanent that stays, with the exception of that 2 to 3 month period from early April through late June. As I just mentioned there, the temporary fencing that we're proposing is just from foul pole to foul pole, so it doesn't enclose in the whole field. So if you can imagine from where the dugouts are to the foul poles on either foul line is still open, so there's access through the field. It's just from the foul pole to the foul pole for the in-play fence. So that area will not be fenced off completely during those 2 to 3 months times.
I'm sorry, we'll have to keep public comment towards the end, and their presentation should go over more detail. If you want to write down your question, we'll make sure to get to it at the end. Thank you.
There's a little diagram coming up as well that will be, this is just so it was out there that this is a gift being made kind of on behalf of CCYBS, not looking for funding in terms of the installation, the removal, the storage, any of that part, that would be all taken on our behalf.
And frankly, that's one of the reasons it's so important to us to find projects like this where we can invest in existing facilities, as opposed to, obviously we want the kids in this town to have the best facilities possible so they can have the best experience possible with all the programs we put on for them, including the baseball and softball. And when we have an existing baseball field like this, as opposed to trying to find other space where you'd have to really go in with, excavators and build a baseball field. Think about what Kevin Costner did in Field of Dreams to his cornfield, that kind of work. As opposed to something like this where the baseball field is there and we don't need to ask for a single public dollar. It's paid for in full by money CCYB already has. And the company that we found, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, but I believe they set it up. At the end of the season, they take it down, they store it. I was actually pretty amazed when this project was explained to me at how convenient it is.
Thanks, Dan. Next slide, please. So this is not, exactly to scale, and obviously this is like a photo grab that we got online and kind of added a red line to it. It wouldn't be that thick.
To be clear, this is an admitted amateur just trying to figure out how to put a line on a screen grab from Google Maps. This was not done by anyone who is any good at computer art. So sorry if it's not perfect.
But essentially, to one of the questions that piped up there, it was, if you look at that middle diamond there where the fall lines go out, there would be access straight through the field, and that field, with the exception of when it's being used for baseball, is still open for the public to use, for kids that are at that playground to run on and run through when there's not baseball happening. Next slide, please. I think just overall, a slide worth noting, within the past 2 or 3 years, just since I've been part of the board here at CCYB, we've partnered with the town for numerous facility upgrades at Ripley, at Rideout, at Emerson, just across the town itself, with things like backstop padding or batting cages. The fields, I haven't got a chance to really meet a lot of the people responsible for them, but in terms of the fields in general, and in particular the 3 fields, Little League fields that my own son plays on, I mean, they're top notch. It's like the best fields that we play on in the area: Ripley, Rideout 1, and Rideout 2. And Rideout 2 is just missing this one piece, right, to really pull it up to where those other 2 are and allow our entire community to participate on these top-notch fields, not just the ones playing on Ripley and Rideout 1. Just thinking about process, we think about this Rideout area playground. Just before I came on board, there was a collaboration where CCYB kind of gave back the Rideout 4, the full-size diamond in the corner, to pave way, literally, for the walking path that goes around the entire playground, as well as more green space in that corner. It was a field that wasn't getting the type of use. We could pivot our program other way, in another areas to other fields. So just that idea of partnership with the town in terms of being willing to collaborate and work with them. Before we even kind of went out and talked about this project in general, we know that we share that space with CCYS, that they have a pretty robust both spring and fall programming on there. But knowing that this proposal was for the spring season, chatted with them, hey, how would your fields overlay? Would you still have space for your program? We got the approval from CCYS, so for Concord Carlisle Youth Soccer, yeah. So just, kind of checking that box that we went through and made sure that we would be good neighbors there. And just, as we have done with all of these facility upgrades, making sure that we're following the proper channels here as we go through to get these proposals and permits in place. Next slide, please. So kind of thinking about the fencing as one component to this proposal. The additional 2 proposals are things that we've done in the past 2 or 3 years at other fields in town. Once again, Ripley and Rideout 1, we've added this backstop padding. There's a picture of it on the next slide, which we'll get to. And we have added the batting carpet to the cages at Ripley. Both of those additions have really stepped up in terms of the playability, the safety, the backstop padding itself. It allows the ball when it goes past the catcher to take true hops off the fence. Some of the fencing at Rideout is kind of peeling up a little bit, which would allow balls to slide under it. The backstop padding covers that up, so instead of paying for a repair for a fence, the backstop padding kind of it makes the life of the fence actually longer itself. Obviously, just the word padding, it's soft. Kids are running into it, or the catcher slides into it. You're not running into chain link. So the backstop padding has been a huge upgrade. I guess this one would be, the aesthetics of it is maybe up to personal opinion, but it's a nice, clean maroon, you know, nice and low. It seems that personally, I think it adds to the aesthetics of the baseball field itself. The batting carpet, which exists in the Ripley batting cages and which we're proposing for the ride-out batting cages. The batting cages already exist. They're right adjacent to the, they abut right up next to the tennis courts there. Right now, that surface is, it's like a crushed, like a stone dust almost. It's like a gray, kind of gravelly material. It gets lots of weeds that can grow in there. As the young players use it, it creates divots and holes where they would kind of dig their feet into or where someone would be pitching from. So both of those things necessitate a lot of upkeep. You think about a lot of safety with the divots or rolling an ankle or things like that, where this batting carpet just lays kind of right over the top of it. It drains, and it just keeps everything kind of nice and level and flat and playable there. It's green, so it kind of flows right in with the grass that's right next to the cages. I think that's it. I think I talked through those bullets there. Next slide, please. So just some quick pictures. These are actually taken this morning. The one on the left is currently Rideout 1 with the backstop that was installed in 2020. So you can see the bottom 4 feet of the fencing there with a maroon padding on it branded with the Concord Carlisle text. And the one on the right is Rideout 2 without that. So essentially it would be the same exact design, consistent, and look just like that. Next slide, please. And the picture on the left is also taken this morning of the batting cages at Rideout. You can see now there's some smaller batting carpet in there right now that serves, that is kind of like a more temporary fix. You can even see this early in the season, kind of closer to us where the L screen is, some of those weeds popping up there, which would be non-existent if that green batting carpet would cover that entire cage. The cages are about 15 feet wide by 70 feet long, and there's 2 of them that abut each other right next to the tennis courts. The picture on the right is actually a similar project that the company that we got the quote from of what the black vinyl coated chain link fence looks like. So this would be kind of flashing back to the temporary fencing on Rideout 2 and just get a kind of visual of what that would look like. And obviously it would match up aesthetically with the new chain link that was installed for the tennis courts and for the batting cages as well. That kind of wraps up our slide. I think just in closing, like we're here as putting this proposal together, like on the behalf of our youth baseball players. You know, we come here well-intentioned to understand that the Rideout facility as a whole is a shared space, a multi-purpose space that is used by not just youth sports organizations, but by residents of the area. We're looking to be good neighbors there. We're trying to do this in a really thoughtful way and be kind of as minimally intrusive in the amount of time that fence is up. You know, we do play summer baseball, we do play fall baseball, knowing that the spring season is our kind of premier season with the number of registrants that we have, the number of players that come through is the time that we use Rideout 2 the most. So only leaving up for that set amount of time rather than leaving something more long-term for our other seasons. So, Dan, I don't know if you had anything else in closing or if that basically covered it.
No, I think that covered it well. I appreciate the Rec Commission giving us a chance to talk about this. Like John said, you know, we love Rideout. It's a great shared public space. It's been fantastic for youth sports. I mean, I grew up playing Little League on those fields. I'm a Concordian myself, and anything we can do to really enhance these facilities and improve the experience for these kids playing Little League now. We're looking to do it, and we're looking to do it in a way that's going to work for the town on the whole. Obviously, we're here primarily on behalf of all these kids who get to go through this program, but we're glad to be able to talk to everyone here, and we just want to be good neighbors.
Thank you, John and Dan. We appreciate the presentation and the information that you were able to provide for us. I do want to recognize and send appreciation to CCYBS for their contributions and commitment to the town previously, and for your partnership on these efforts. Now, with that said, I would like to open up some questions from the commission on the presentation. It would actually be helpful to keep the presentation up because we may refer back to different slides. Am I pointing in the right direction? Could we please, thank you so much. Commission members, anyone want to start, or would you?
I'll start.
Thank you, Paul.
Hi again, Paul Bohm. Thank you for the presentation and for the work you do for the baseball and softball players. That's my first question. You mentioned baseball, but we're talking about baseball and softball in the same fields.
So Rideout 2 particularly is a baseball field that we use for our Little League aged players. And we've kind of, what we're hoping is that with Rideout 1 and Rideout 2 side by side as kind of our baseball field, that multiple games or multiple practices at the same time can be a little bit of like some camaraderie, some community that comes there, just as Emerson, now that Emerson 2 has been skinned to use for softball, Emerson 2 and 3 can create that for our softball players to get that sense of community when they're coming together, see their friends, all at the same kind of complex.
Right. So tell me, how often are the fields in use? I mean, other than the games, they're during the week, their practices. I mean, how often during the week are they used?
Yeah, so in the spring season, which is about an 8-week season from April break to the end of the school year, every weeknight, the fields will be in use. And then on Saturday afternoons, we kind of stay away from the youth soccer schedule Saturday during the daytimes, but Saturday starting at 3 going on, and then Sundays for most of the day on Sundays, it will be programmed.
And the fields are also there for general public use. If it's not being used for games or practices, somebody can just walk on with their kid and use the field correctly. So it's open for public. It's not a private field.
No, we do have to, we go through the rec department to receive permits for certain times. So we let them know what times we will be on the field. So I think our time at Rideout 1 and Rideout 2 is something like 4:45 to 7:45 Monday through Friday, or don't quote me on that exactly, but we have to permit those times when we have use of the fields themselves, and then when we're not on it, yes, they're open.
Right, when they're idle, others can use the field.
Correct, yeah.
And if I may add one thing, and forgive me if I'm a little too new to any of the permitting process. I did join the board fairly recently, but the facility improvements we're talking about here will have absolutely no bearing on the private versus public use and nature of this field. Not one blade of grass that is public shared space will become privatized or will exclude anyone in any way, certainly beyond the permitted time that is going to happen with or without a fence and backstop padding.
So I have a couple of questions on the proposal itself. The rough dimensions of the lines, are we talking about 100 feet, 200 feet? What are the rough dimensions of what we're looking at?
Sorry to interrupt, could we please go back to the slide that shows a rendering of the fencing, of the proposed fencing?
Again, it will not be a giant, thick red fence.
I actually emailed today our fencing company to have the company tell me what the actual length of the fence is. It's 185 feet from the home plate, like around that circumference. So like, there's a way to use math to figure that out, but I didn't do that math before I got here for the exact length of it. But it's 185 feet from home plate, from foul pole to foul pole.
Right, that's what I was saying. It's the radius is 185 all
Correct,
around.
correct.
So on the fencing, have you looked at alternatives? There are fences that are deployed and retracted for games. I've seen that in many multi-use fields. Have you considered even this is temporary, you're proposing it to be up there for a season? Other types of fences that can be deployed and retracted for games?
Totally, yeah. So great question. We actually looked pretty thoroughly at what other types of temporary fencing exists. We looked at kind of both from a cost perspective, what those different options cost, and more importantly, like safety and functionality of it. So there was some that required, if you're just looking to do it on a daily basis, the amount of time that in kind of human power it would take to set those up and take those down on a daily basis became too much. Or there were some more portable options that had the posts were like skinnier and they came up in the reviews for safety. If like a player came to it, the posts were skinnier. This was kind of the safest and the most, I don't know if convenience is the right word, but the most doable in terms of we wouldn't be able to get a 10-person crew there at 4 o'clock to set it up an hour before every practice Monday through Thursday night with the different options that we kind of considered. Those other options involve storage, so are we going to get a shed on site to store it? There was a lot of...
To those who are in the Zoom, could you please mute your microphones? Thank you very much. Go ahead.
We did our homework, and I guess we would happy to share some like what some other options were and why we didn't go with them if that was necessary.
Do those remain an option should you have to go down a route other than the one you're proposing?
I don't know. I think I'd have to think about that a little more to see, because having looked at them, there was a reason why we didn't do those. So I don't think we would do, like, we're not looking for fencing just for the sake of fencing. Right. We're looking for like kind of the right one for our program, I think.
Great, thanks. Just a couple more. I don't want to kind of dominate. So in your fencing, can you have breaks in the fencing or doors in the fencing so that, you know, somebody, if it's up there for several months and somebody you're not using the field, you can walk through it as opposed to around it? Can you put breaks in the fence with that?
Are you talking about like a gated one or just like an open one?
Either an open one or a gated one. Is that a possibility?
Sure, I think a gated one would be possible. I'm just trying to think of like from a safety issue, like does the hinge on the gated one present, right? The front of a chain link is pretty flush. Like would that gate create a safety hazard would be my first thought there. An open one, same deal. I think of like someone running looking for a ball and there's an open, and if they just hit the fence, they hit the fence. But if they hit that post, I don't know. I would guess if I had to give an answer right now, I would say no. I would say that we would want it to be solid from foul pole to foul pole from a safety standpoint.
Yeah, two more questions. You talked about, well, it's obviously multi-use field, and one of the uses is soccer, and I think it's it's the youth soccer.
CCYS, yeah.
If the Google map of that shows a soccer field actually laid out.
Right.
So is there a conflict with that field and the fencing, or have you determined that with CCYB that there wouldn't be a conflict?
Correct, yeah. So we've talked with CCYS. We actually went out there and walked the field with them, kind of showed them where we're going to be, what we were thinking. And they were like, yep, sounds good. Like, we don't use a full-size field there. We do this, this, and this. And if you can see to the right, like all that green space there that's not being used, and that's kind of a holdover from when that full-size diamond used to be there, and they just didn't overlay their soccer fields there. And they were like, oh no, we could like pivot it there. Like, we have a pretty good working relationship with them and share space with them over at Ripley and other places. So they were on board.
Last question's on safety. I guess I have several safety questions. One is just in general. There- Even without the fence, down the left field foul line, there are people there. What's the current protocol for safety for batted balls that hit down? Is there any protocol? And, just comment on the pros and cons of the fence in terms of safety, the overall safety, because
So usually,
hit by balls, even without this proposal,
find out officially.
flying around the field.
Okay.
Again, folks in the Zoom room, could you please mute your microphones? Thank you. It happens to all of us. I appreciate that, but thank you again.
Yeah, so just a few comments on safety in general.
Yeah, it's another great question, and I think it's a valid one in terms of protocols for the safety just along that left field line. It's, abuts so closely to that playground. And I would say no, that there's not, besides just of being aware that there's a baseball game going on, and hopefully that adults present with their children are aware that the proximity to the baseball fields and to the playground, that they have an eye on their children and make sure that they're not doing that. Obviously, without fencing there, as we said, that remains open for, there's coaches on the field keeping an eye if someone gets too close, but a foul ball goes off to that side is a possibility for sure. The safety piece that I mentioned was more of above that red line when there's activities happening up top there, whether it be toddlers or dogs or runners or ultimate frisbee or anything else that happens. Like, my opinion of it is that boundary there, when this field is being used 7 days a week, would help with safety actually, and help kind of separate those 2 or 3 or 4, whatever kind of activities are going on, that there's a clear separation between those, I guess.
A bit of a warning.
Yeah, like here.
Game in progress.
Yeah, you can't wander on or watch your, or that ball that's coming hard hit through, it hits the fence and stops. It doesn't keep going into wherever. Yeah.
No, thank you for your answers. That's all I had.
Welcome.
Thank you. A couple of questions just to orient us with this image here. To the left down the third baseline, that area that's tree covered in between the two baseball diamond 1 and baseball diamond 2 is right out playground.
So, Madam Chair, I just sent a most recent GIS image to the moderator that is there, so I'm hoping she's going to put it up. Not that the red line isn't excellent, but just because you'll be able to see exactly what it looks like as of 3 months ago.
As we're having that discussion, how many feet off of the baseline, so the dirt area in the diamond, how many feet back is it proposed to be?
So you're asking from like the edge of the infield, the dirt infield, out to the, let me think about that. It's 40, 80, I would say
120.
90, give or take 100 feet or so. The pitching mound's 46 feet. Second base is probably another 40 feet from there. Say give or take 100 feet.
The baselines are 60 feet to first base?
60, correct.
60, so it's going to be another, if it's 185 out, minus 60. It's probably be
From the base
120.
down the.
Oh, yeah, I was just thinking
I
about.
thought you were asking from the.
I'm asking from the, so the edge, the arch of the dirt.
Say about 100.
Could we please get the image of the field?
She's working on it.
Okay, I'm sorry about
It was
that.
just I didn't send her a good one. That's on me.
No, that's
I sent her
okay.
my whole screen, and so she
Sure.
had every window that was
So
possible.
the question really has to do with where the dirt edge is, the furthest part of the dirt edge between first base and second base.
Sure.
How far from that, where the grass meets the dirt, would the fence start?
I would say approximately 100 feet.
Have there been incidences of people getting hit by balls previously? Have there been safety issues in the past?
I am aware of, like, when I've been there personally, there's been like, the toddler one comes up a lot, like either a coach, like a third base coach, kind of like running out and ushering a toddler off, or a parent running onto the field to like swoop up their toddler and take them away. I'd say the toddler and the dogs have been the two most that have impacted play. Thankfully, there hasn't been any serious injuries that I'm aware of in the 3 years that I've been serving on the board.
Madam Chair, can you say that again? You want it from the right field?
So what I'm looking for is, excuse me, does somebody have a pointer? I feel like I saw a red pointer.
Yeah,
I'm casually pointing out Dan here.
It's primarily a cat toy, so I want to make sure it's not like the face of a monster.
Oh, it's a butterfly. That's gorgeous.
Could you please point to the part where the dirt on field 2, yep, right there, where the
Okay.
dirt meets the grass, the furthest point out, where the dirt meets the grass, in the center between first base to where the fence is proposed to go.
Is it okay if I do it on this one?
Yes, that's totally fine.
All right, great. All right, so that, yes,
Okay.
what do you think, John, around there?
Sure. I mean, you can see in reference point to the field up top to ride out 1. It's gonna, ride out 1 is about 200 feet, give or take. So this one's gonna be 15 feet less than ride out 1, which is at the top there.
Or 89.1 feet based on the GIS.
Thank you. Can you say that again?
And you guessed 90 to start off.
I mean, that's really good. That's really good. 89.1 feet.
Okay, and for clarification, just to reiterate, you mentioned that these fields are used primarily, the size of the diamond is used for essentially up to 12 years old?
Correct. 1st through 6th graders, no older than 12 years old.
Okay, and is that the same for right outfield 1?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
With the pointer, I just want to point out where the parking lot entrance is, the main parking lot, which has the field house next to it where the restrooms are, and the pavilion. And if we could please go back to the original image. Thank you very much to Minuteman Media for your assistance. So as we look at this, we have the pavilion, which would be on the side closest to third base by the basketball courts. The restrooms and field house are behind that. The pathway comes in, and then on the other side, not seen, over to the bottom right-hand portion, that's where the other parking lot is. And there's also another area for recreation, is there an official term for that?
An outdoor exercise.
An outdoor exercise circuit area. My kids have a very different name for it, so.
And that, unless I'm mistaken, that's where Field 4 used to be, correct?
Correct.
Yep. Okay, I just want to get oriented to the field. Could you please, Dan, point out where the batting cages are?
They cover the full length of the 3 tennis courts.
Okay, just for reference point. Could we now go back to the picture of the fencing? Next image, please. Thank you so much. So the proposed fencing is the 4-foot black vinyl coated chain link fence on the right, correct?
Correct. It's an example of it.
Example, because that there is, I believe, that's permanent fencing.
Correct.
Is there a substantive difference between what you're proposing and what is there?
The lack of permanent sleeves in the ground. So the company, they just drive it straight into the ground, pull it, fill it.
My next question is actually for our recreation director, who's responsible for the scheduling of programming. I know in addition to youth sports, we have other programs that we schedule at Rideout. I believe there's also a concert series as well. I apologize to Minuteman Network, if you could please take us back to the image of the entire field. Where would that typically be located?
Sure. Anna McEwen, Recreation Director. So the image that you're seeing on the screen, we're going to be bringing our summer concerts back to Rideout area this summer, which will be exciting. And we would be setting up our stage between the top of the red line and to the right of the pavilion in the middle of the park. So they need electricity for the band. So we're going to stay close to that general corner of the space.
And the fence will be down by then.
Yes, I think I saw a notice about these. I think they're all in July, correct?
Correct.
Okay, yeah,
Excellent.
fence wouldn't be a factor.
Perfect, thank you for that clarification. Also to the timing, this is something, the proposal is to put it up in April and take it down in mid to late June?
Yep, our spring season goes from right around April break to the end of the school year. So in the proposal, we said early April to late June to have a little wiggle room, but we could be more definitive with that date if
Okay,
needed.
no, it's helpful to have that time frame, that you're not looking for 6 months, you're not looking for a month and a half, get some specificity. And as we're looking at this image, you say foul pole to foul pole. Essentially, we're just following, if someone were to walk this, we're following the baselines out from third base and first base.
Correct.
Okay.
Baseline straight out, and then the radius of 185 connecting those two foul poles.
Okay. My other question had to do with coordinating with youth soccer, but you answered that. I'll turn it back over to commission members. Are there any further questions?
Hi, Jim Howard. Thank you for the presentation. Just two quick questions. The first one on the foul poles, will they be taller than the fence or will they the same height as the?
The proposal includes foul poles that are taller than the fence.
Do you have any idea how tall they'll be, or?
I believe they're 8 feet.
And then as far as padding on the fence, will there be any padding on the top rail or on the fence itself?
So typically there is a little plastic cap that will go along the top to prevent the just those little triangles that poke up on chain link to kind of cap it and cover it. I think aesthetically it would be the same. Rideout 1 has that same. I think it's relatively standard for chain link fencing on baseball fields.
That's it for me, thank you.
Do you have an image available for what the foul pole would look like?
Not on the current presentation, no.
Okay, thank you.
It would be yellow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Paul.
Yeah, I have a quick question on maintenance. In general, the infield, is that maintained by the town or
town.
by, okay.
Yeah, we recently we've tried to do our best to, we have a little field box with drag rakes, and as best we can, we try and drag the infield to stop the weeds from growing and rake the mounds and rake to keep it consistent from trip to trip. But the town does an excellent job of keeping our fields in top-notch shape.
Would the fence interfere at all with maintenance, with mowing or?
Eric Shaw, who is the Assistant Highway and Grounds Superintendent, is on Zoom, if you'd like to hear the answer to that. Eric, if you can unmute.
Good evening, everyone. We have had discussions with CCYBS about the fence and the maintenance impacts on public works. And we discussed at length of what that would be. We think it will be minimal. Certainly there will be, minor impacts to our maintenance programming, but nothing such that would create any challenges or, any issues for us, for that short period of time.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions from the commission members? Pete Funkhauser on Zoom, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Thank you, Pete. I would like to now just get some questions from Anna McEwen, Recreation Director.
Thank you, Casey. Thanks for the presentation, gentlemen, appreciate it. A lot of my questions have been answered, but the concept of vandalism and if this fence isn't a permanent fixture, kids might jump on it after hours, wiggle it, things like that. How do these work to assure that it is truly safe the next morning?
It's a great question. I guess we are trusting the installer, knowing that they have installed at the high school and that it has been safe and playable on that field as well, in terms of its sturdiness and kind of durability. Essentially, the way that it was described to us is it plays, during the time that it's up, it plays identical to a permanent fence, just that it's only there for a short time and we can pull it up afterwards with no impact. So, but it's a good question, I think, to maybe dig into a little bit more to consider.
Okay. And I don't want to lose sight of the other two pieces of the presentation, the backstop padding and the carpet. So thinking of the backstop padding, you know, if it went in, if the commission, you know, supported that piece of this, what is the shelf life on a product like that? How often would we need to be considering replacement? And would you ever see any larger backstop paddings, or is this the product that you would see for the future?
Yeah, this is the product that we would replace it with. I mean, just seeing the one at Ripley that's been up for 2 or 3 years now, the one at Rideout 1 that's 2 years old, I wouldn't be surprised to see the shelf life of those go 10 years or so. I mean, same deal without any kind of vandalism or anything like that. And it's, in which case, you know, CCYB would fund that and replace that as needed.
Okay.
And in terms of would we ever need a larger backstop padding, I can't imagine that coming up. I mean, if you look at Fenway, it's, you know, obviously a larger enclosure, but the padding's about the same height. Now that's I think that's all we'd really need.
That's it, tops, and that would never go bigger than that, yeah.
And thinking of the batting cage, what is the material?
Yep, it's the bottom of it is like a kind of rubbery latex cut type of material, and the top is like a you know, kind of like what you would see in some like screened in porch patios or something like that, like just kind of carpety.
Professional term, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carpety indeed. Yeah, and to be clear, we are talking about mats. It is none of the infill, not what the high school football field is made of. I mean, they basically play on the same stuff the Pats do. It's not that. It's a carpet that can go down and if need be can come up.
So would you propose taking it up at the end of your seasons, or is this a product you would leave out until it too needs to be replaced?
I wouldn't see why we would take it up. It seemed, I mean, you could roll it, but then you'd have to store it, find a place to store it somewhere. I would recommend leaving it there until it needed replacement would be, I think, the best way to handle it.
And any idea how long you would expect that to last?
I would roughly say about 10 years again, yeah.
Yeah, they do pretty well. We have the same material in the cages over at Ripley, and I just checked those out the other day. My two of my kids go to school there, so after I dropped them off, I walked over, and those are in great shape.
Great, thank you.
One additional question on the batting cage. Is that carpeting going to be covering the entire surface area?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Seeing there are no other questions from the sorry. Yeah.
One more. I think several times you've talked about sort of the playing experience. Can you say a little bit more of that for people who may not be plugged into baseball? What that
Sure.
What that experience is versus not having. You can play a baseball game without that fence, right?
Yeah, I was kind of anticipating this and trying to think about what maybe an equivalent would be. One thing that came to mind was like playing tennis on a tennis court with no fencing around it. So if you're feeding someone and learning how to hit and they keep hitting it and then you're chasing the balls everywhere before you came back, or or maybe there wasn't a back line on the tennis court, so you didn't really know where to properly stand or position yourself. You tell outfielders, go a little closer and a little further back, or you're during batting practice, and instead of just running along the fence to collect the balls after batting practice, you're kind of running all over the place for the deep ones there. That was the best equivalent I could kind of think of. I think just the experience too, right? Like you're playing youth basketball or youth soccer, or like baseball fields in general have fences. So like just understanding how to play the fence, the ball bounces off the fence, how do you throw it back in? So like help preparing our young athletes for those who wish to continue and keep playing, making sure that they have that experience here in town where we have the field itself is top notch. It's like the mound, the bases, the infield, everything. That was kind of the one piece that's missing. I spoke earlier about the batting cages. Like we're very fortunate to have those batting cages, but if you have this kind of gray ground stone dusty material that's full of divots and there's then it's all of a sudden it's not having that same playability or impact that it could.
And just one more note on the experience, the baseball experience. There really is something to be said for the thrill of hitting a home run and doing your trot around the bases. I mean, I certainly didn't hit as many as I would have liked back in the day, but you never forget that feeling. One of my closest friends from growing up in Concord, I won't say his name because part of this anecdote is that he really wasn't that good at baseball. He had one moment, it was our 12-year-old season, it was a playoff game, and we were at Rideout 1, and he got a hold of one like he never had. We're both 40 years old now, and it still comes up whenever we get together. It's just such a happy memory for him. I don't think he played baseball beyond that year, but boy, did he go out on a high note. It really is something. And my own son, my oldest is 7. I mean, I don't have any kids who are going to be hitting the ball over a fence anytime soon. But my oldest, he played baseball last year, and he's the most wonderful kid I know. He suffers from autism, and he often has trouble in a lot of sort of activity in organized settings. For whatever reason, baseball grabbed him. And he's really enjoyed it. He's excited for this season. And he was asking me one night last spring when we were leaving Rideout 2, he was asking what the deal was with the fence. And I said, well, some of the big kids might actually hit the ball over the fence and then they get a home run. And he just, he can fixate on things sometimes. And he kept asking, all right, when will I be big enough to do that? When will I be, when I'm in 4th grade, can I hit a ball over that fence? He just, It really can be a thrilling thing for a kid, and that's just a piece of the experience that I'd love to see as many of these young players get as can be.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions from the commission? Seeing none, I'd like to open this up to public comment. If you could please queue at the microphone in the back, and as Kate mentioned, you can state your name and address for the record.
Do we stay up here to answer, or do we sit and?
Yeah, just for the microphone, if you
But we
if
may
you need to
be-
answer.
Okay, gotcha.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
Good evening, Benjamin Klein, 245 Central Street. Just wanted to speak out on the record in favor of the project. I live over in West Concord, and I have 2 young kids, so we use Rideout for obviously the playground and the green space, but also I'm a volunteer soccer coach in town and baseball coach. We use the field for that as well, and particularly keeping in mind with the young kids, I appreciate the safety factor of having the fence and the padding, because there is a lot of activity going on, particularly when there's games and there's other people enjoying the park. So I really appreciate the safety factor of this proposal, and I'm in support of it. Thank you.
Your address again?
245 Central Street.
Leslie Michelle Tao, 111 Losbrook Road. I want to first say that I see you guys have put a lot of work into this, and I've really shown a lot of respect for the other users. Quite different from 2008, when there was another proposal to fence off the field. And I think the ideas for the batting cages and the backstops are terrific. I just had a couple of questions about this proposal. If there wasn't a fence, if there was a visual line on the field and a kid hit a ball past that line, wouldn't that count as a home run? Does it have to go over a fence to be a home run?
That's a great question. I think as kind of a modification, you could do that. It's not standard practice, or it's not like in terms of like guidelines or like official, if it was like a travel game where we were playing another town or something like that wouldn't be able to happen. But if it was like our town baseball league where we were able to like make up our own rules, then like, sure, that could. And I think for me, like that, the home run piece, and you know, it may be a little different than Dan on this one, like that's like way down on my list in terms of why this fence is going up. I think just the playability, having it there to stop balls, and that physical boundary to separate the space would be the most important things for me.
I'm not sure if that answered my question. So if a kid hit a ball behind that line and nobody had caught it, wouldn't that constitute a home run?
So if we decided in our own town baseball league with a Concord team versus a Concord team, if we said, hey, this is the ground rules for this particular field, we have a painted line, so if someone hits it in the air over this painted line, we'll count it as a home run, then sure, we could count that. But if we were hosting like Lincoln Sudbury for our under 10 travel game, they'd be like, no way, that's not how it works. Like, no, like we can't play there. And we'd have to play on Rideout 1 or Ripley that has a fence that like part of it is like the fields, Rideout 1 and Ripley, that are fenced in right now are kind of the only fields that we're hosting any kind of travel baseball experience for our players currently.
Okay.
And just on that point, I'll say if it's a hard yes or no, can this be done? I suppose it could. It would be a novel concept. I've never seen that done in decades in the game. And I could actually, I'm just trying to go through it in my head, having not actually seen it done. I could see that leading to some arguments too, because we're not going to have like another umpire out by the line to see where the ball's landing exactly. Whereas with a fence, it's pretty clear which side it lands on.
Okay. One of the other reasons you wanted to have the fence was to give the young people learning the game sort of an orientation to their positions on the field. And especially for somebody with autism, that's really important. I worked with kids with autism for 40 years, so I understand how visuals are very helpful for them to understand their position in space. But again, I'm thinking, why does it have to be a fence? Why couldn't it be lines, just like in football, there's lines on the field that orient players to where they are in a position of the field? Why does it have to be a fence? The fence is only 4 feet high. So one of the safety concerns was balls going into the field. I don't see how that would be stopping that many balls if they're hit high from going into a field. And the way the soccer field is, the way that it was shown on the map, it looks like the fence is going across the soccer field. So even if they're not using, well, so are you saying that the soccer organization is saying that they're not using that size of a field so that the fencing wouldn't interfere with the size of the soccer field?
Correct. I think that, and I was aware that image would get this question, but I think it was an older image that came up that was pulled for that. And that full-size soccer field, they no longer use at Rideout. My understanding that they use smaller fields for younger age groups now.
Okay.
And I'll take the heat on that one. I'm the one who pulled the Google map and didn't find a more current one.
Fine, it's fine. I'm just looking for some clarification. Another one of the points that you made was that this was for safety. I'm also thinking about, I see a lot of, I live in that neighborhood, and I also play tennis there, and I see a lot of people doing Frisbee games and playing on the soccer fields and area. And if, I'm wondering, if they're like running to catch a Frisbee, they might run into the fence, whether it's the pole of the fence or part of the fence, and it could make some injuries there. And my question is about liability. So if somebody is using the field during that time for something else, or even if it's a kid going back for a ball and they hit the end of the post or get injured somehow with the fence in some way, or somebody had brought up vandalism if they're trying to jump over it and get hurt, would there be some liability on the part of the town with this kind of an obstruction in the center of a big open space? Somebody got hurt.
So, Kate Hodges, Deputy Town Manager. Recreational facilities are covered under the recreational statute. So essentially, it's a user beware type of situation, for lack of a better term.
Okay.
So if somebody were to jump over the fence and become ensnared in it, the town wouldn't necessarily be liable, because the understanding is that you are playing some type of contact sport and there's an inherent risk involved in that. If, for whatever reason, the fence was broken or in a state of disrepair, and we knew about that and allowed that to continue, and somebody were injured, then we would be liable. But that very rarely happens, because between our facilities department and the park and tree department, they're very good about making sure that once things are reported, that they're repaired.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Thank you.
Hello, Kimberlyn Drake, 452 Losbrook Road. Good evening. I have a couple of questions, one for our proposal makers and also one for the commission. The question for the commission, and actually also for recreation, involves how many other, how many other private organizations request use of that space, for other types of uses other than sports, for whatever, that would potentially want to use the center part of the field a lot.
Sure, I can field that question. Ann McEwen, Recreation Director. So right now, the reservations and permits that we have on Rideout for the spring season is just CCYBS. Like the gentleman said, every now and then we will have youth soccer request some space in those middle fields. It ends up being 2 7v7 fields. Outside of those groups, we will sometimes have an outside organization request field space. Priority is given to those outside non-resident groups last. So we have seen some Frisbee groups, we've seen a flag football group request some space. A fundraiser wanted to have a pit stop for a bike event that they were doing. So we have seen some requests like that, but I'd say seasonally, less than 10.
You mean less than 10 in what would be that 3-month span where the fence would be up?
Yeah, yes.
Cool, thank you.
You're welcome.
The other question I had was about the fencing and about alternatives to fencing. As the previous question asker had suggested that, and also earlier in your presentation, you had talked about other things that you had considered instead of the chain link fence that we were shown. With regard to being able to define the boundaries of the field for safety, if there was something that like we talked about a line on the field. I know that wouldn't necessarily define what a home run is, but for safety purposes, if there were either a line or a series of something like the small flags that DigSafe puts out, or something like that, that would be a very obvious line. In your opinion, would that help with the safety issues of being able to, well, one, have the players be able to see where the edges of their space are so that they can position themselves properly? And also, do you think it would help with the other people knowing where not to come as they're utilizing the rest of the space?
Sure. I think it would be, those type of kind of creative solutions would be better than nothing, definitely. That would be kind of a creative way for us to think differently about some of those things that we brought up, like the positioning, helping other park users be aware of kind of where that space was with a painted line or some kind of little flags or something like that. I think if we weren't able to do a fence up there, that we would have to start thinking a little more creatively about how to solve some of our some of our concerns if all of them couldn't be addressed all at once.
Thank you for that. And I did have one other, which is we had talked about Ripley and also about Ride Out 1, both of which I learned, I didn't know about Ripley, that it already has fencing of this sort. So you had talked about it being educational for the players to have that fencing there. Is it just in the moment, or I assume these players would also get a chance to play at Ripley and would also sometimes play on Ride Out 1. So would the fencing there give them training that they could then apply when they're on Ride Out 2, or is it only in the moment when you're playing that fencing needs to be there in order for it to be helpful in that way? You know what I mean?
No, I totally know what you mean. And no, I think that's a valid point that like you can get your training if you had practices on those two fields. I think, one of the reasons we're here is because of the growth of the program and just knowing that, thinking about kind of our Little League age, grades 3 to 6, almost 200 players currently in the program, all 3 of those fields being used on a consistent basis. Just kind of bringing all 3 of those fields up to par in terms of, it's not like, oh, well, 4 teams get the game on these 2 fields, while these 2 teams get the field without the fence or the field with the, so, just coming to that kind of consistency, knowing that with the addition of those 2 fields, it's the one that's in the best shape, the nicest, it's right there, it's just missing this one little piece. So, but I think they're all good questions for sure.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for all that.
A quick follow-on to that, for the travel programs, can they only use Ripley and Ride Out 1 currently because of the fencing perimeter that's around it?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And about roughly how many travel teams do you have? Because is that delineated by age?
Yeah, by age. So we have, there's 3 this springtime, and then I would say 3 to 5 in the summertime as well. Summer is more flexible with just without school in session to schedule things at different times. So not quite as big of a need in summer for that 3rd field.
Thank you. That's a helpful point.
Hi, good evening. Chris Scarzi, 33 Maple Street. First of all, I appreciate the presentation and the approach you're taking. You know probably that we had gone through this a few years back with some discussions about permanent fencing. So I was a little discouraged when I first saw the note that the fencing was being considered again, and it does make me concerned about a potential permanent fence that might, this is sort of the camel's nose under the fence maybe. So, we get used to it. Everybody says, oh, it's been fine, right? And suddenly there's a permanent fence. It also makes me concerned about Field 3, that we're going to come back and say, oh, you know, softball could really use another fence that is temporary or permanent. So I have those general concerns about growth. I love the work that's been done to date. You know, Field 1 is great. It has a home run fence, which is excellent. But that home run fence is at the edge of the park. And I'm sure you're ready to hear this, but having a fence in the middle of the park is, for me, concerning. And I do think about the different aspects of safety, and a fence that's out in the middle of the field, to me, doesn't offset other safety issues. I think it's another safety concern. You know, oftentimes a baseball field has a warning track, or, you know, some indication that the fence is there. And, you know, I would be concerned that someday we're going to say, oh, we need a warning track because we need to know that the fence is there because kids are running into it, either playing baseball or doing something else in the field. So those are some concerns. I'm curious about the growth of baseball. My kids play baseball and softball. They're long past it, but I'd be curious to hear some of the numbers in terms of the increase. That's encouraging. I remember it wasn't always that way and the numbers were going in the other direction. So do you have any information on the growth of the programs?
Just since, so this is the start of my third year in my current position there, and we had our biggest jump was is it 19 or 20? It was COVID related because I think families felt that baseball was a safe way to re-engage, that you're outside, that there's physical distancing anyway. So if there was concerns about other sports, that we were right up next to someone. So we had numbers jump then 25, 30% in enrollments from the previous year. And then since then, we've kind of held steady with it. We're holding on to more kids than we used to. We used to lose players at the 5th, 6th grade level. We were only able to field historically one Babe Ruth team, which is kind of our 7th, 8th, and some 9th graders. We fielded 3 or 4 teams both of the past 2 springs. I heard that the freshman team at the high school had to make cuts for the first time in years and years. So there seems to be more longevity or more kids sticking around in the sport than there was 5, 10 years ago, is my understanding of it.
Yeah. Well, that's good news. So yeah, those are my concerns. You know, the possibility of permanent fencing, I would really object to. And one other thing about a fence that's in the middle of lawn, in terms of maintenance, you know, it's hard to cut close to the fence, which is another reason why warning tracks exist. It's like a maintenance strip. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I would expect it's going to be hard. Is someone going to go out there and clip along during the growth season of the grass so that it doesn't look like, I know the high school baseball field used to look, or the softball field, that always had that temporary fence out there with the bags holding it down, and, you know, it didn't look great. So I have just general concerns. I don't know what the assurances can be about future growth, but thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Pat Cross. I live at 18 Edmonds Road in Concord. Before that, lived in West Concord for 25 plus years. I just have an issue. I think what you're doing is fantastic, and I think that the programs that you're running are great. And I think that it's great that the town has the facilities to be able to support you. However, I also feel that putting a fence in the middle of a green field is really ill-advised from a safety standpoint, and also from a multi-use standpoint. That's a 4-foot black fence. It's metal, it's got metal posts. It is potentially dangerous for anybody else doing anything else in that area. And I would hazard also for the kids. I mean, for a young child to hit that fence would not be great. You have a fenced, you know, field on the other side, right out 1, I think it is. And then you have one at Ripley. I know that there are multiple fields in town. I don't believe that there are any fences on the Emerson fields. So clearly you can play this game without a fence. The other thing that I'd like to mention is Rideout is the only public park in West Concord. And, you know, for the people who live in West Concord or in the center, or even if you live a little way out in West Concord, that's your only public park. So if you put a big fence, and it is a big fence, but if you put this fence in the middle, even if it's only up for 3 months, I think you really change the dynamics of the land use there. So although I support the program, I don't support the fence.
Thank you. Just a quick clarification. Kate, is Cousins Field considered a public park?
Yes, it is, but even closer to Rideout is the beautiful, almost open Giroux Park, which is going to be about a quarter of a mile up the road and is supposed to be done in September. With lovely open spaces and 7 acres of walking trail, a huge open field space, and parking for 54 cars and 3 ADA spaces.
Giroux is down Commonwealth Ave
That's
towards
correct.
the prison, but Cousins Field is considered a public park.
It is,
Okay, I
yes.
just wanted to get some clarification on that piece. Thank you for your comments. Yes, no, I agree. I just want some clarification on the other public spaces. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is Rama Valianti, and I'm not a Concord resident. Is it okay if I give some input? I am a baseball player, still baseball coach, and an ultimate Frisbee player. May I give some feedback, please?
Could I at least have your address?
Yes.
With credentials like that, I mean.
212 Hesperus Avenue, Magnolia, Massachusetts, which is part of Gloucester.
That's amazing. You came all the way from here?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time in the Concord area. I come from Marlborough originally, and I love this area.
Oh, Marlboro? I'm from Hudson.
Oh, the Hawks.
I'm sorry, you
Oh,
can't
yeah,
speak.
Panthers.
I'm sorry.
Thank you to John and Dan. Great presentation. So being a baseball player, I can appreciate everything. My only home run in Little League was a grand slam in my 11-year-old season. I still remember that. I still talk about it, right? So that was a highlight in my career. And as I think you mentioned about the flags, and someone else mentioned about the painted. I think those are all great ideas. I think the fence is a great idea, but without a warning track, it can be dangerous for your players. There's no doubt about that. And as an ultimate Frisbee player, occasionally using Rideout Field, occasionally on Thursday evenings, with
Hypothetically speaking.
mostly Concord residents, if I'm not mistaken. I'm a wannabe Concord resident. And on Emerson Field, we play Sunday afternoons in the different parts of Emerson Field. Beautiful field. It's beautiful to have all that access and not have fences in between those 2 softball fields. Those are softball fields, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Correct.
So not to have a fence there is beautiful. Now, if we played Ultimate Frisbee as we do at Rideout, we'd adjust. We use that middle area that's diagrammed with the red dot, but we would adjust. But when the Frisbee goes, it goes. And when the wind takes the Frisbee, we go after it. And if we're playing all out, like I like to play, and many of my colleagues like to play, we're not looking at fences, we're looking at the Frisbee. So it could be a recipe for disaster and injuries. And I come from a landscaping family, so I have some knowledge on that, and you're gonna have to use weed whackers to get that grass and get those weeds. Okay, will that weed whacker injure or damage the fence? And the facility directors can speak better about this. Would a weed whacker damage a chain link fence? The chain link fence probably has rubber on the outside of the chain link, again, if I'm not mistaken. And these are all comments, but just one quick question, a clarification. The yellow thing that goes around the top of those fences, is that all the way across, not just on the divots? It goes all the way across. That would certainly help safety, because a lot of your players, The ones that like to go all out are going to dive for those balls. They're going to dive over the fence. A lot of them are going to end up over the fence, like some of my friends did playing baseball. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak, and good luck to everyone. But the painted lines with those flags, many flags, again, will denote for the parents and the toddlers to stay away from that area. I think that might be a nice compromise. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I will say, not on behalf of the Recreation Commission, but as a private citizen, laying out for Frisbee when you're older than 30 is dangerous, and you do so, as Kate mentioned, under the recreation statute at your own risk. Thank you.
Typical Marlboro.
Before you go on, I have a question about ultimate Frisbee. I'm not a professional. I play Frisbee. Are there limits? Are there bounds in an ultimate Frisbee game? Right. Right. So you don't have the setup right next to any fence, including the batting cages or any other. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hello. My name is Caroline McCloy. I live at 137 Central Street. I have lived in Concord for 38 years on the same place. I loved your presentation. I have two sons, both of whom played Concord Youth Baseball. My husband and I both coached Concord Youth Baseball.
Sorry, if I may for 1 second. You Miles McCloy's mother?
Yes.
You coached me.
Okay.
I remember you.
Okay, you've changed a little.
That may not be helpful.
I haven't, but you certainly have.
Well, it's nice to see you again. Please, Coach, continue.
Well, actually, at this point, I'm no longer obviously coaching baseball.
You would
only
still be
watching-
allowed to make Dan run laps
I'm
if
only
you.
watching it on television.
And also, I still call you Coach. You did a good enough job. You earned that.
There you go, Dan. What's your last name?
Healy.
Oh, I remember you. So anyway, I really appreciate all the work that you guys do. I really do, because I didn't get to the level that you guys are at. But now I have two dogs. My husband and I walk them obsessively, and every day we walk through Ride Out. And just to reference something that you referenced, the Field of Dreams, when I look at Ride Out and I look across that field, I see a field of dreams, and it's not just about baseball. It's about Frisbee, and it's about kites, and it's about dogs running and toddlers running, and I would hate to see a fence there. And I hope that we can all do something that's safe and still open and visually beautiful.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi. John Simmons, 17 Central Street in West Concord. First of all, thank you very much for all the time that you give to the kids and to the town. We all appreciate it and appreciate the time spent on the presentation. I, too, was a Concord Youth baseball coach for about 10 years. I had 3 kids go through baseball and softball. I have spent way more time than I can remember on Ride Out 1, 2, 3, and 4 back in the day, as well as other places. The backstop, I think it's a great idea. No issues there. But I do want to make some comments to ditto some of the other concerns about the fence. So I just wrote them down. So first, aesthetics. yes, Field of Dreams. I mean, Rideout is a jewel, and it is a jewel of open space that we all appreciate so much. The fence, I think, begins to compromise that, and that's my biggest concern with a temporary fence. So that's one. Two, safety. I actually think, to what Chris Scarzi said, I think a fence actually raises as many safety concerns as, you know, not having a fence there. A 4-foot high black fence in the middle of a field. Typically, a fence would be along the border of a field, not smack in the middle of a field where people are flying kites and playing frisbee and chasing dogs. Also, as somebody who coached a lot at Rideout too, I think the biggest safety concern is little kids from the playground running onto the field. When I was there, that was the biggest concern. I never saw anybody get hurt, but I'm not sure what problem we're trying to solve with the outfield fence. The bigger concern seems to be maybe toddlers running out with parents chasing after them. So the fence doesn't do anything for that. Third, the concern is about growth. Yes, as you know, as Chris Scarzi said, Rideout 3 doesn't have a fence, and maybe down the road, CCYB comes back and says, well, the kids playing on Rideout 3 also need an experience with a fence. And now we're beginning to look at Rideout in a totally different manner. And then last, you mentioned memories of hitting a home run. Great story you told. During the meeting, I was texting with my son, who's now 24 years old, and we were texting 3 or 4 great memories we all had at Rideout, none of which needed a fence. I mean, Field of Dreams, baseball dreams, memories, they can be made without a fence. You know, we should be so proud of what we have at Rideout, and I think it's fine just the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Matt Johnson, 21 Winthrop Street, member of the Select Board, but speaking on my own behalf. I'm actually very pleased with the event this evening. I really commend the Recreation Commission and the presenters. I think that having been through the 2008 cycle, the proposal then, as well as now more recently the 2016, I believe it was, the renovation of Rideout Field, which was just the opposite. It was a fantastic project, and I think it led to improvements for the baseball program, as well as just a lovely park facility that I think all of us treasure now. That now, as we approach, you know, another proposal, I think we can do it in light of those two experiences, and I think some of those lessons have been taken on. So at first I was fearful that we were heading back to 2008, and now I'm hopeful that we're heading more to a 2016 type of a scenario. But I did have a few questions. So one is there any other example of this type of fence, you know, by itself in the middle of a field outlining the outfield of a baseball field? And if so, can we see examples, right, of those like that, and just understand what the experience of those, you know, places are with that type of installation? Because I think that benchmarking is always one of the best approaches to understanding that. The second thing, which is a completely off the curve point, is I don't think that anybody's really thought of the batting cages in the proposal to put the carpet in the batting cages to be a controversial thing. But I just wanted to note that there is a citizen petition warrant article on it town meeting, and depending on the way you read it, I don't know if you would consider that to be relevant. So I just was going to give a heads up to that, because it does say if the town will adopt a moratorium on the construction or installation of any synthetic turf on any land of any size owned by the town for a 5-year time period starting May 1st. And they do define synthetic turf as monofilament carpet with loose infill. I guess maybe there's not.
There's no infill. There's no loose infill.
And it's not monofilament carpet either.
Okay, so it's not. So I just wanted
Correct.
to check in on that, but just seeing that that's.
We triple checked that beforehand.
Okay, good. So then I think that's pretty much it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more comments from the public?
The room is done.
Thank you.
There's,
Move to the Zoom room.
Yes.
Let's start with Daniel Stapleton.
Yes, hi, thank you. Dan Stapleton on 20 Conant Street, across from Rideout. So I know you got limited time, so I don't want to kind of repeat a lot of the previous comments, but I just had sort of wanted to sort of express my opinion that, again, very supportive of the program, but not as supportive of the fence itself. One of the things that has really been apparent living next to the park is that it really has become a multi-use park over the last few years. And a lot of that is dependent on the open space. So I think maybe I'll just sort of leave it at that. I was very surprised by the number of the signups that came out. It's one of the first things. I think I heard 250. I think that's great that baseball is alive. I'm a little concerned about what that means in the future because we have parking for like 50 vehicles plus or minus. So we already have people parking on Conant. So I know that's not the explicit topic tonight, but just to the extent that the facility gets improved for baseball and gets used more for baseball, I think that commission's going to have to relook at that issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Daniel, if you'll put your hand down, that would be great. And then we'll go Sally and Bill Satterthwaite.
Bill Satterthwaite at 297 Lawsbrook Road. I just want to talk about the safety, in a limited way, the safety of the fence. But in my long life, there have been a lot more pads everywhere. And I think that, if somebody trips, either play in the outfield or ultimate frisbee or just running around and their head hits the chain link fence, fine, it's got a lot of give. If they hit those posts and maybe the top rail also, they can get a deadly or serious concussion. And so my question is, are you going to put padding on the post? And it sounds like the protection at the top of the chain link fence probably is adequate, but it seems to me that that's something that could easily be done and add a real layer of safety, padding on both sides.
Thank you so much.
Next, Hilpo.
Yes. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
It's actually Polly Stat, 17 Pond Street. And yeah, I want to thank you both. I don't know your names, for taking the time to put together the presentation. I've had two sons that have grown up through the CCYB program, and they've only found enjoyment from that program. They're young adults now, but they never had any playability issues. That was never a problem for them. So the fence is a problem though for me. I agree with Coach McCleary and John Simmons in that, I use the park every single day, walk my dog, and to be able to stand and look clear down through the park or play ball with the dog, it just would be a shame, even though it's temporary, to have a fence be in the middle of the field. The other, and I do think the fence, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that it's a safety factor, that it's a positive safety event for the youth baseball. It seems to me it's just, there's so many big safety issues. So that I can't wrap my head around. Also, I could be wrong, but I believe that property was donated by the Rideout family many years ago as the intended use to be an open playground and park. It was never intended to be dedicated to baseball. And I'm not saying that it is dedicated to baseball, but I just think, by putting up a temporary fence, I have that fear, as I think Mr. Scarzi brought up, that then what are we going to not want temp fences in other areas, or will this become permanent? So the whole fence, as if you can't tell, I'm not comfortable with. I love the idea of the pads around the backstop, and the carpet I think is a great idea. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ann Scarzi.
Yes, thank you. I have two questions. One is, how would the fencing be installed and uninstalled twice a year? So would it be heavy equipment in and out of the park that might kind of
My
damage?
apologies for the interruption. Could you please state your address?
Oh, I'm so
Apologies.
sorry. Ann Scarzy, 33 Maple Street.
Thank you so much.
So yes, the question was about installing and taking down the fence twice a year, whether that would require some heavy equipment that might kind of damage or tear up the fields for some amount of time. And then my second question is there any plan or maybe more importantly, is there any guarantee that there would not be advertising installed on top of the fencing? Thank you.
My answer, yeah. The first question about the installation, I would have to get more specifics, but I was told by the company that it doesn't damage the grass. However they put it in, they're not damaging the grass besides where the poles go in. I don't know the specifics of it. I hadn't considered the advertising thing. I feel like that would need to be, we would probably need to come here and do another thing if we were looking to do that, but I would feel that that would not be a good idea if we were trying to kind of maintain the aesthetics. Like a plastered fence with a bunch of advertisements on it would not add to that. So
Yeah, for what
sure,
it's worth.
I would say no to that.
Yeah, our internal discussions with us and the rest of the board, that hadn't actually come up.
No, we can just say no, there won't be advertising on the fence.
I'm okay, yeah, that's not, we're
If
not here to.
I can just step in and pass the mic to Deputy Town Manager Kate Hodges. I believe there's a bylaw that addresses that concern.
Correct, naming rights. We have a bylaw. I don't know the exact number, but anything that has any name or advertisement that's on any public land, of which, of course, Rideout is, has a very long, lengthy vetting process. And for the most part, unless it's a gift of property like the Rideout family or the Giroux family, then we shy away from that. So it would be not particularly feasible.
Totally fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris Muller.
Thank you so much. Christian Mueller, 29 Winslow Street, West Concord. Thank you for the presentation. I'm not going to belabor the point because I think a lot of the points I wanted to raise have been raised, but I do believe while it's temporary, spring is also temporary, and we're talking about sacrificing the use of the field in spring for other activities that require us to use the entire field. I also believe safety has been cited as one of the main reasons why we're going to install this fence. And I have a hard time believing that this is a safer option for both the kids playing baseball and the other people using the field. Usually you require a 6-foot fence that is padded on both sides to increase safety. The reason you use a 6-foot fence is so that people that run into the fence don't flip over the fence. A 4-foot fence is going to increase the amount of accidents, as it's been raised by other people in this meeting. So I would not cite safety as a reason to put up this fence. I would actually cite that as a concern to put up this fence. Thanks.
Lisa McKinney, please. Lisa McKinney?
Sorry. Yes, thank you. I was muted. Lisa McKinney, 293 Haywood Mill Road, West Concord. A number of people have already addressed my concerns in terms of safety. I don't see any safety issue, and I tend to concur with the others that it would create a less safe open space. I do have one thing that I would say is that this is about compromise of sharing public open spaces with a private enterprise. And I think that that balance has been struck over and over the years. Both my children played sports at Rideout. My son played baseball. My daughter was a softball player. And there was never any indication at all that that there was some need to have the experience of hitting a ball over a fence, and arguably hitting it over a fence might expose somebody else to the ball in the head as they're running or playing frisbees going by. It seems to me that one of the other reasons was that it's good for the coaches to teach proper positioning. And I think that that can be really safely accomplished in the compromise that I concur with. And I was thinking the same thing, was drawing the white lines on the ball field, much that you'd have on a football field. In addition, it's less of an eyesore to have those white lines drawn. It occurred to me, though, as I was coming in my driveway this evening, though, that those 4-foot reflective markers we put out for our driveways and the snowplows all winter could very effectively, game by game, be installed out on that foul line, so that if somebody really needs to know, did they hit it over something, that those might be there, and at least they're removable and placeable at the beginning and end of every game, just the way the bases are placed. In terms of the other comment I would make is, this is the only open space in West Concord, and I just don't understand why West Concord is always treated as the redheaded stepchild. You would never imagine doing this at Emerson, and the fact is there's plenty of other open spaces that I don't know if they were considered, for example, over at Sanborn, where all of those buildings will be removed and there will be plenty of land there. I think to take an entire community and ask them to make a compromise that you say is going to be a few months is disingenuous, because like Mr. Scarzi, my concern is that there's a big summer league. Is it next going to be, let's extend it into July? Is it going to be, let's put it in for the entirety of the summer? As your sport does continue to grow, maybe that would be the extension you would look for, or making it permanent. But either way, I don't think that that belongs in the only park that West Concord has at this time. And I would say vote negative on putting up the fence. And I think as for the experience, the kids can have that experience in ways that compromise the need of the public to use public space, and not forfeit, especially where we've all been locked down for several years, the ability to use the open public spaces that are available to us. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I do want to clarify once again. I know and I understand that Rideout is a central point, public open space point in West Concord, but it is not the only open space in West Concord. There is Cousins Field as well, in addition to the Giroux property that is slated to be open in September. That is not to refute your statement, it's just to provide some clarification.
Well, if I might just address that, I would like to point out that there aren't swing sets, slides in a fenced area at Cousins Field, so that it's not really good for taking toddlers and children. It's not really a great place for a track. There are no entertainment for children there, or picnic tables or anything else. You can't possibly equate Cousins Field to Rideout Park and insist that it's the same experience.
I want to be mindful of time.
Thank you.
Clarification was on open space.
Thank you.
We have one more person in the waiting room.
Happy birthday. Yeah, thank you. First off, very good presentation and effort by Dan and John for the baseball upgrades. I'm a new resident. I live in 1750 Wedgwood Commons, so right across the. We came here a couple of perspectives. So we moved to West Concord primarily in the proximity to Wedgwood Common because of the access to a public open space. And I'm a dad to two little kids, a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old. So I was hoping at some point they could partake in baseball. I grew up playing cricket, and cricket, again, like baseball, is a bat and ball sport where people hit over a fence to score 6 runs, or as you call a home run. Where I just want to give a perspective here. So when I was playing that sport younger, and I've played through to multiple clubs and up to a non-professional county level, the ball needs to go over a fence or a line. In our case, which was flags. We, as a younger kid, we had a 4-foot fence, a wired fence, And, people tend to run. And I was maybe 7 years old. I ran across it, and I actually cut my foot in one of those wired fences, and I've had a permanent scar since. I'm afraid that toddlers, barely have the attention span from going from one swing set to the sandbox to the next area. And as somebody else has also pointed out rightly, spring is temporary, as are these fences. But kids really don't see a fence. They tend to run where they can. And much as little dogs are, they really don't have a sense of space. So I'm afraid that having even a fence, as temporary as it might be, presents more safety issues than not. And having had a permanent scar, I really, don't want my kids to get one. I hope they can learn baseball someday, but I support the program, but I don't support the fence. And one last point, having a fence in the middle of an open ground affects the aesthetics. So I support the program, wonderful thing on the padding and the carpet, but I cannot support the fence. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
I believe that is everybody that I'm currently seeing with a hand up on Zoom, but if you have a comment, speak up.
Okay, seeing none, it is 8:51. We have some business to attend to before we close out the meeting. First, we need to select a date for our meeting next week. I would propose we choose between April 5th, which is a Tuesday, or April 7th at 7 p.m. virtual. Pete, if you are still on Zoom, we would love to know which of those days works for you.
The 5th.
The
I'm
5th.
looking at my calendar. What's the choice?
April 5th at 7 p.m. seems to be the consensus here at the table.
I can't do April 5th. No.
Okay. Can you?
What was the second choice?
So the second choice was Thursday, the 7th, but we do have a quorum and we're going to lose other folks if we choose the 7th.
Okay, then do it the 5th, because I couldn't do it the 7th anyway.
Thank you, Pete. We appreciate your flexibility and thoughtfulness. To the crowd, that is April 5th. That is a Tuesday at 7 p.m. That meeting will be held via Zoom. The agenda will be posted on the town website.
Yep, you can find that on concordrec.com. Under the About Us, you'll see the Recreation Commission, and there's a link to the agenda where you can find it there.
Additionally, I will remind folks, if you have further public comment that you would like to submit for consideration by the commission, you may email Anna McEwen. She's right here. Anna, can you put your email in the chat for people? Is that possible?
I can. And here's cards for anybody in-house that.
We will be collecting public comment until 5 p.m. on Friday, this Friday, April 1st. With that, I would like to thank all of you for being here this evening. There are a couple of key points that have come through above and beyond the specifics of this proposal. One of which is that we are all still reveling in our athletic accomplishments from our youth. We have deep appreciation in this town for the work that Concord Carlisle Youth Baseball and Softball has done. Their commitment to upgrading the facilities, their commitment to the young folks in our town who want to participate in the sport and making it accessible. Thank you very much. I also want to point out that the overarching theme is what a gem Rideout is, and how lucky we are to have that resource in this town. And I want to do full kudos to the Public Works Department, facilities, and to Recreation for the collaboration and coordination that is done between the departments on maintaining that park, on making sure that it really captures the spirit of the town, and it's able to host and promote youth sports and other collaborative activities. So I just want to point that out for the record, and again, thank you all for being here tonight. Sure. That's a great point. So it's not entirely linear. Let me put it that way. and Kate, please feel free to jump in at any point. As I mentioned beforehand, the Rec Commission does not vote to approve or reject this proposal. We can determine whether or not we want to support or make an affirmative or a negative recommendation to the select board. I believe Public Works would also, no, they don't make a determination on that. So the select board then would be looking towards getting feedback from those departments and from the Recreation Commission. Our hope as a Recreation Commission is that we can enhance the collaboration that we've had with Public Works, extend that to their representative body as well, so that as we have these matters come up in the future, we can start off together as two entities who are reviewing these proposals, vetting them on the merits, and then making a joint recommendation to the select board.
This will be on a future agenda item.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So the process is that the select board would officially have to vote to accept the gift. And generally speaking, when accepting a gift, unless it's a donation of monetary, cash or something, if it's something that has a value, but it's a tangible property, then the select board generally would be told by whatever department oversees it where it's going. So if the commission says that they support the acceptance of a temporary fence, and the fence is going to be installed here, and they're looking for the select board's approval to accept the gift, that essentially does that. If the commission says that they don't support it, baseball could still come forward to the select board. Historically speaking, the select board has, as Casey said, sort of sought the input of the people who oversee and manage and do the maintenance on those facilities.
Further to that point, the Recreation Commission, in addition to updating our administrative code, we have also been reviewing this process, and we're in the process of approaching a strategic plan so that we can evaluate what our recreation assets are in town, so that we will have documents that can guide these conversations in the future. Thank you all. I need to adjourn the meeting. I need a vote to adjourn the meeting in a second. I make a motion, sorry.
You move, I second.
Thank you. Roll call, Casey Atkins. All in favor? Aye. All right, we got it. Thank you. Hey, excellent job. Really. Thank you. Yeah, she's great. I think that